Yeah.
So, out of all your books, which are you most worried about coming true? Which do you think is going to come true?
Out of all my books, which one am I most worried coming true? Which do I think is going to come true? I don't really try to predict anything, right? I think all of my books are kind of funhouse mirrors that reflect the present. So it's not so much that I worry about them coming true. I think they all are true to a certain extent. The extent to which they are a projection of something that might happen in the future is really a comment on some things that I think seeing happening now, right? I think I see happening now. So it's not like I project in the future that we'll have civil liberties taken away from us in great measure because of the war on terror. I see in the present that that's happening. And this trick that I call predicting the present, which is you write about something that's going on right now as though it were just starting in the future. When it happens more in the present, people go, "You are so prescient, you predicted that." Did you have a question? No? Oh, okay.
This is going to be kind of a dumb question. I know it's dumb, but how do you know what kids like?
How do I know what kids like? I ask, and they buy the books. And they buy the books after reading them for free a lot, which tells you that, you know, that's one way to know for sure that someone likes your book, is if after reading it for free you buy it. You probably really like the book. And I get a lot of email from young people. It's one of the things about pursuing a subject or form a little is that if it's moderately successful, you get to pursue it more because the people around you start sending you stuff that's related to it. So when I wrote my first short story about gold farming, Anda's Game, in 2003 after a Slashdot story about the first gold farm in Mexico, for years people sent me every single story about gold farming because they thought I'd made it up. So they were like, "Look at this thing you predicted, it's coming true." What that meant was that I became an accidental expert on gold farming. Right? I had this like army of researchers clipping every story about gold farming and telling me about it. Now you had a question.
I know in Boing Boing you did a lot of, you were like strongly anti the iPad. Is there any like device that you think is a better alternative, or do you think that that particular style of device has no purpose on the market?
What's the better alternative to the iPad, given that I've been so critical of it? So I want to make clear that I'm not critical of the iPad's technology.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like, is there an alternate device? Like, I know
Right.
it's because it's closed off.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not critical of its technology. I'm critical of its ecosystem. But the thing is that there is no iPad without an ecosystem, right? Like an iPad without an app store and without all that other stuff, it's just an inert lump of plastic, right? All that other stuff is what gives it, you know, its liveliness. And so I think what's happening, and I think that we overestimate the extent to which hardware is difficult, and we underestimate the extent to which ecosystems are easy, right? So I think that we are seeing the edges of a better ecosystem in things like Google's Android marketplace, in things like the Ubuntu music stores, in lots and lots of like little bits and pieces of Creative Commons stuff. And I think that like because that stuff is happening around the edges and it's diffused, it's hard to see how big it's getting. But like Creative Commons has got something like 400 million works licensed under it now. And as that ecosystem builds up, the capacity to build hardware that lives, that is like the extrusion into the physical world of all of these kind of nebulous networked things will become easier. So I don't see any real alternative right now, and that's a pity. I wish there was a better one. I think the position you shouldn't buy an iPad would be a lot more credible if I could say you should go buy this instead. I don't have a you should buy this instead yet, but I hope to see one. Did you have a follow-up?
You mentioned the Ubuntu music store. Semi-related question. Are you on 10.04 yet?
I'm on Ubuntu 10.04. Not yet. It came out like the day I left on the trip, and I feel like it's tempting the fates to try to upgrade your operating system while you're on a book tour, away from your office and so on. So every morning, the Ubuntu update facility, Ubuntu is a flavor of the GNU Linux free operating system that I use on my ThinkPad. It's great. And the ThinkPads are awesome hardware too. They've got waterproof keyboards with drainage holes underneath. And speaking as a man who was capable of destroying like 2 PowerBooks a year, my ThinkPads are way more rugged than any of the Apple hardware I ever owned. the update center every morning when it does its daily check goes, there's a new version of the operating system. Did you want to update now? And every morning I'm like, don't tempt me. I know what'll happen if I do it. That'll be the first Ubuntu upgrade that doesn't go smoothly because every upgrade I've done has gone like butter. But you never know. As a former systems administrator, I know that there's times when you update and times when you don't. And this is one of those times when you don't. Thank you. Yeah.
So the intellectual property isn't a scarce commodity on the internet. Is there a way to measure it, the true value of the intellectual property?
Is there a way to measure the true value of intellectual property? Well, I guess I don't know what intellectual property is anymore, because that term is so broad. Do you mean copyrights, or do you mean?
Okay, well, more specifically, like say a piece of software.
Oh, is there a way to measure the value of a piece of software?
You can't just say it will cost this amount of money because people will buy it, because if they won't.
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways that we add up value, right? Like we talk about what it costs to make something. We talk about what it would cost to make another one, right? So like what would it cost? So there's lots of numbers around about, if Linux didn't exist today, what would it cost to like sit down at, Microsoft and make it? That number is really big. It's like $1 trillion or something, some giant number. I forget what it was, but every now and again it gets bandied about by the free software movement. But what I think the true value of information in the 21st century is that information technology makes it possible to do things in a physical world for less money. So, we tend to think of Walmart as a company that specializes in moving goods from China to America and selling them, but it's not. Walmart's an IT company that uses IT to accomplish that goal, right? Like McDonald's is not a hamburger company, it's an IT company, right? If you take the IT away from McDonald's, it wouldn't exist anymore. If you took the hamburgers away from McDonald's, it might do something else, right? But the IT, that's its infrastructure, right? Not the burgers. And so, Boing Boing being an example of something that's kind of got the leadership of Wired, it's bigger than most daily newspapers, and its overheads are like a couple $1,000s a month. Well, a little more now that we've got like a kind of employee and a half, but still not much relative to, a great big firm. And that's the real value of it is what we've done is we've figured out how to take things that used to be expensive and make them cheaper, which means that A, when you've got capital, you can do more, right? So rather than just using your capital to make something the size of the New York Times, you can use your capital to make something much bigger. And B, you can do smaller things for less, and more people can try their hands at it. There's a kind of a pervasive story about how like Twitter or Google or rather Blogger or Flickr are crap because most of the people who sign up resign. But in fact, to me, this looks like a success story because, if you can create a Blogger account and resign it 2 days later, you basically have figured out that you don't want to write a magazine for free, right? Think about what it used to cost to find out you didn't want to publish a magazine, right? It used to be you'd have to like go raise some capital and hire like 20 people and rent an office and then, have your, and then lose your house, right? I mean, as Thomas Watson said, if you want to double your success rate, triple your failure rate. Well, the way to triple your failure rate is by making failure really cheap. And so that's what I think IT has done, is it's made it cheap to launch forms of individual and collective endeavor that used to be really expensive. It's one of the reasons I think the big industrial firms are kind of churning, because they used to solve a problem that's gotten very easy to solve, and they haven't found a hard problem yet to attack. And so they're kind of, or the hard problems that they've embarked on are fool's errands, like making copying hard, which is just like a kind of a dumb idea. It's in the realm of proving that ether exists or discovering phlogiston, as opposed to like something that actually is likely to have some success.